Well, it's time for the performance management cycle again, Sue.
Can you believe
2009, 2010 coming to a close.
Yep, and we're back.
And we're back. So to start, can you talk to us a little bit about what's happening this summer with regard to evaluations?
Yeah, so we're in the throes of it at this point. We've got the 09-010 closing out. So we've
so what takes place there?
Well, we're past the interim process,
right.
The interim review cycle period. So now everybody should be in step 5.
Right.
And step 5 is where you're going to do your self-evaluation. So you've got step 5, 6, 7, and 8. And everybody should remember this from what we did last
time. Now, what about the self-evaluation? Because we did do those last year.
Yes.
Tamara, self-evaluations, what should people keep in mind when doing those? Because we all do those.
Yeah, well, it's so important because it's a great opportunity for employees just to kind of toot their own horn and say what they've done and accomplished during the year. Right. So I think if they've kept notes on their performance or have any letters, they need to include that type of information.
Great. And each of us has goals and competencies, and we'll evaluate each and every one of those, correct?
That's correct. That's
Excellent.
correct. You evaluate each goal, each competency, and then an overall rating at the end.
And don't forget the overall rating. That's a good one.
Yeah, that happened last year.
Because you could have done really well with one goal, like you really spent a lot of time and energy, and everything was great and perfect, and the other goals maybe you had to sort of do a little less for that, and you want to speak to all of your accomplishments. Right. And be able to rate yourself effectively for each one of those. And then you do an overall and say, even though this might be a little less here, a little more here, I still feel like I did, overall, I still feel like I did this kind of performance.
Excellent. And each one has an opportunity for you to actually type in text.
Absolutely.
So in addition to putting a rating, you can then add text and then send that forward to your manager.
Results and comments.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So that's the first step, which is step 5 that employees need to do. And then what happens after that? Yeah.
People should know too that in step 5, once you get to step 5, right, you can't edit those goals. They're locked.
Oh, that's a good point, because we've moved through the process past the interim process, so the goals won't change, but there's plenty of room for comment on the goals. So you send that forward to step 6. Where does it go? What happens?
So then your supervisor gets it. And now this is the evaluation, right? This is where they actually will go in and say, given that we've had this whole period, this whole cycle, I'm now going to evaluate you as the employee and me as the supervisor, just to talk about. Now they'll go in again. They'll do each goal separately and rate those.
Same exact thing. The employee does.
They'll do the competencies and rate those, and then they'll go in and do an overall summary. So
it's so important for supervisors to enter comments about those goals and competencies.
This is your time.
It is. They've got to be able to justify those ratings too. So if you give someone a 5, let's see some documentation as to why they got a 5.
Exactly.
And that's true for any rating. Of course, his comments are so important to employees.
Great. So supervisor then executes step 6, sends it to step 7, the reviewer. What takes place in that time frame? There's a couple of things going on.
This is the golden time.
This is. So it sits in step 7. The reviewer is, of course, going to be reviewing those, looking at information across an organization, but then there's calibration, which we'll talk about in a separate film. But can you give us just a high-level overview of what takes place in this step as we kind of work toward the end of the cycle?
Sure. Calibration really is meant to be a process where a department head can look at all of the ratings across his or her department and see if they're being applied consistently.
Great.
And also, see if it seems right, if the ratings for each employee seem on track.
Great.
So departments
it's another set of eyes on the data, looking at big picture, small picture.
Yeah.
So that's step 7. That happens, and it goes after that to step 8. What takes place there?
So it goes back from the reviewer. Once the calibration is completed, the reviewer feels good about
essentially
everything.
signs off on the reviews.
Signs off on it.
Comments.
And then sends it
forward
the comments,
to the supervisor.
right? Don't forget about the comments.
That's true.
And then sends it forward. And remember, each step is always a send forward to get there.
So step 8, back in the supervisor's dashboard.
Now the supervisor is sitting looking
What's
at
the
this
cue there for the supervisor? Should I just send it on to the employee and kind of sign off on it?
No, you're going to want to sit down and talk to the employee.
First.
Right, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And they're going to actually get an email notification.
They are going to get an email notification.
That's a big change
this
summer. Email notifications that'll really help people stay on track for the different steps. So the email notifications on the supervisor. When I'm in step 8, I sit down and we talk about it. And then I then sign it, send it forward to step 9.
And just as an example, this is what I did with my employees. Is I actually did exactly what you just said. I did my evaluation for each one of them. I scheduled a meeting with them. They came in and we talked about it. I showed them online, so I wouldn't have to necessarily print it out.
Yeah.
I said, these are the things, these are my comments, these are the kinds of things that this is how I rated you on each of the separate goals, this is what the summary rating is going to be. And then at that time I said, I'm going to sign it, and I clicked, signed it.
So you did it in
and then
the
I said, I'm going to
meeting.
send it forward. And yeah, we did it while we were sitting there, so that when they went back to their desk, they would have it in their dashboard to be able to go back and review everything that we just talked about.
Great.
So I did it sort of as a, as a process and included them in that while I was signing.
And there are a lot of ways that can be done, no one right way, but I do think the best practice is to have that meeting.
The meeting is essential.
Before you share that data, whether in paper format or electronic format, so you can have the face-to-face conversation,
no doubt about
and
that.
then send it forward or share it in the meeting. Then it goes to step 9. What takes place there? Final step of the process.
Step 9. Well, the employee gets to review it one final time.
They've had the discussion.
Comments. They've had the discussion already. They can look at supervisor comments. They can look at reviewer comments. They can add additional comments if they want.
Great.
They acknowledge that they've received it. They sign it, and they send it forward.
Got to do the send
Got to
forward.
do the send forward.
That's what
that
completes it. That
That's
completes it entirely for that process for the
And what's our? And I know departments may have specific dates, and everyone wants to check with your department. But what is the final date for the process here at the university?
September 30th.
Okay, so all of this takes place. Step 5 to step 9, closing out the cycle by September 30th, though maybe sooner in your department.
That's correct.
So that summarizes the cycle. In another video, we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about planning for the next year.
Exactly.